Welcome to the Wellness as a Way of Life podcast, your one-stop, all-encompassing source of wellness, knowledge, wisdom, inspiration, and motivation. Here we teach you why not all wellness trends are for you, how to figure out which ones are, how to best adapt them for your personal wellness toolbox, and how ultimately to integrate your wellness practices so fully that they become to feel like brushing your teeth. A foundational part of who you are and not a check mark on your to-do list. Welcome back to Wellness as a Way of Life. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of my regrets as a wellness leader and really just riffed a little bit more on why I truly know and believe that there is no one-size-fits-all wellness and how much sometimes I very gingerly have to strongly disagree with other experts, some of them closer to home than others, that make statements such as stop doing this one thing or stop waking up at this hour or stop eating. Like some advice that might be true for some people might be true for a certain gender in a certain age bracket with a certain, time of year, season in a certain place of the world, etc. I think there's just needs to be so much more nuanced. And one of my regrets as a wellness leader is just not trusting this inner knowing that I had quite early on. My journey was first in discovering that there's no one size fits all yoga, even though I was taught in a very dogmatic way. It didn't become sustainable for me to think of being a yogi for life without making it my own. And sure, I had brilliant teachers along the way that maybe encouraged me to make my practice personal on some level. But there was still some like hard and fast rules that, if you had drilled down and asked, essentially I would have been delivered a response that, that's not pure, that's not, you're not a true yogi, etc. And I just, disregarded that over time. It took me years to sort of have enough courage, I think, or certainty in my own experience, trust and confidence to say, you know what? I've been doing this for 15 years and I can speak to the benefits of yoga. I'm okay if you don't want to call me a hardcore yogi, but I still think that it's very valuable because it's integrated in my life in a way that I know it always will be on some level. Sometimes I ebb and flow way more into the yoga world, like the two retreats I went on this year in 2023 were both centered around yoga. I really sort of dove more into the beauty of the discipline and doing it in community and doing it consistently every morning. I'm not saying that there aren't incredible benefits to the dogma, if you will, or the rules and the structure that you need in the beginning. I think when you're trying to make a very significant change or you're trying to develop it as a habit, I think it plays more into these rules or the structure. So if you're an absolute newbie to something, sure, get a good introduction. I would also get an introduction from multiple perspectives. Don't just trust one teacher or one quote unquote expert. Feel around, find somebody who at the end of the day, their energy you're attracted to, that you feel safe and comfortable in the way that they're teaching, that they're hopefully not presenting themselves as the end-all be-all authority on anything, right? So particularly in the health and wellness space, you should be presented with things. Look, here's one thing that could work. Let's see how it works for you. Try it on, see what you think. Is it sustainable? Do you see a difference? Does it work for you? Etc. Instead of just trying it on like full stop. Okay, like back to the yoga example. To be a hardcore Ashtanga yogi, I had to be waking up at 4 a.m. every morning, practicing the full Mysore series by myself or in community every single day. Hashtag yoga every damn day, etc. Or I wasn't considered pure or serious or whatever, but that was never going to work for me. But I also got and still receive endless benefits from the wisdom of yoga, because yoga, of course, is not just the physical practice. There's yoga philosophy on many aspects of life. And I have just thread the beautiful aspects that I love into my life and made it a part of who I am. And that's what's made it sustainable and something that'll always be in my life, because I don't have this thin layer of guilt that I'm not doing it right or enough or exactly how some teacher 10, 15 years ago taught me it needed to be done. So I say all that to say, it's pretty ironic when there's some level of FOMO or fear. Maybe it's not fear of missing out, but maybe fear of not doing it correctly or doing it enough. If you have this thin layer of fear going on about some wellness practice or health ritual, it's pretty ironic, right? Like, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. If you're fearful of letting it go, like if I stop doing this tomorrow, my mental health will go out the window, my physical health will go out the window, my emotional well-being, I'm immediately not going to feel spiritual. It just doesn't make any sense, right? It's not a sustainable perspective. We really have to just take the things that serve us, just take those little pieces and create your own wellness mosaic, if you will, and give yourself permission to just leave the rest aside. We're not all meant to be meditating in a certain meditative tradition. We're not all meant to be a certain arm of yoga. We're not meant to all practice Pilates. We're not all meant to be marathon runners. We're not all meant to be plant-based. We're not all meant to be I'm gonna take that one back. We all have our right to define what plant-based can look like. I will argue that being plant-powered or plant-forward or majority plants on your plate is, I think one thing I can argue is ideal for everybody, but the ratio is something that you have to figure out. What is the ratio that works in your lifestyle, in your family, in your culture, in your taste buds? What do you like to eat? Where do you find pleasure? And finding a way to make all of that ebb and flow. So bottom line is, one huge problem I see in the wellness coaching industry is there's too much focus on dramatic quick fix changes, right? We exist in a culture that wants to see immediate, or if not immediate, within 21 days, absolute 100% transformation. Sure, you can get a lot accomplished. You can see major changes in 21 days of harsh pivots in all of your habits. But if you're not paying attention to what's going on, taking notes, really figuring out how are these changes making you feel, not just physically. That is a major one. And lots of people just want to feel better physically, or oftentimes you start with finding a better physical experience, and that sort of has a ripple effect into improving your emotional and your mental and maybe your spiritual experience or state, inner states. I think that's completely valid. But if you're doing a very strict shift in lifestyle habits in a short time frame with the expectation that all of these changes are going to stick, I think most people go into it, they do, like a 21-day detox. It's a wellness wash diet, let's face it. They're just restricting to then go back to some sort of whatever they consider normal. Most people aren't taking on a 21-day challenge with the idea that they're going to keep it up at that level. But what can be really informative with these, quick fix, the challenges where you make dramatic changes, or even when you go on a retreat and it's sort of like you're all in for a certain amount of time, is really paying attention to your experience, not just physical, but how are you emotionally shifting, mentally, what's going on? And you might notice that a lot of your cravings for something that you thought you couldn't live without, or maybe have an addiction towards, be it sugar, caffeine, meat, cheese, your telephone, your social media, Netflix, what have you. You think you can't live without it. Just really being much more observant with how you're craving it when you completely take a break. Is it when you're when you're just exhausted, you're bored, you're looking for connection essentially, you want a quick dopamine hit, like what is actually going on? And when you have this deep level of awareness around your habits, it's so much easier to change them in the long run, and change them in a way that you drip out these positive shifts over time, and that's how it becomes ultimately sustainable. We need more focus in the wellness industry on building aligned custom blueprints or plans with sustainable ebb and flow practices. So, maybe you have like a wellness routine that you love that works in the summer, but then you need to switch it up in the fall. And then maybe again in the winter when you can't go outside at all, or when you're living in a different part of the world, or you want to be more indoors, or in the spring, okay, you want to be more outdoors again, but it's not quite warm enough to do something in water. There needs to be this permission to make it your own and make it seasonal, ebb and flow with the seasons, with your lifestyle. Like maybe you travel X amount of days of the year, and you need something that sort of accompanies you on a travel, your travel wellness kit, if you will, which doesn't have to be a physical thing, of course, but just a modified plan or a version of wellness that you find that supports you, but zero judgment, right? Because at the end of the day, if there's a layer of judgment on top, it's just not sustainable, and it's ironic and counterproductive because you are stressing yourself out over your wellness, right? Makes no sense. So just ask yourself, are you feeling pulled in a million directions when it comes to what you need to be doing for your health and wellness? Because ultimately you need to really just pick a few things, just a few little things that you're focusing on in this season. Let's say maybe you want to thread in some sort of mindful practice, which can be as simple as just actually sitting down and drinking your tea or coffee in the morning and looking out the window, observing nature, not scrolling. Like that's a major shift. You get that solid and sustainable, again, doesn't have to be, I didn't do it every single day, so it's not working. No, just do it when you remember to do it and feel good about the fact that you remembered to do it. And forgive yourself. It's not about an all or nothing approach. It's really, really, truly not. That's for me where wellness needs to be sustainable, inspired. You need to feel like you're in love with your wellness routines at the end of the day. Ultimately, that's where we're going. You want to feel so integrated that it's just something that it's a non-negotiable for you, because you know that you love doing it and you know why you love doing it. It makes you feel better. It makes you feel supported. It makes you feel grounded, connected. And again, we're so busy. You can't be focusing all these things at the same time. So what could you dial down? What could you dial down the intensity on? And I bet you it's going to be just as effective if you're doing it 3 days a week instead of 6, or you're doing it 20 minutes a day instead of an hour. Like, what can you dial down and carve out some time to do nothing, to rest? Because that is the number one thing that I'm seeing people are missing in their lives. Not only the space to do nothing, but the permission when they're actually presented with a moment to do nothing. And arguably it's becoming a practice. We're increasingly so just jacked up on constantly doing things and constantly having our attention pulled in multiple directions, even if it's, curated good in directions like focusing on cooking a healthy meal as I'm listening to a inspiring health podcast like this one, while I'm semi-planning our healthy new vacation in the back of my mind. Like, it's just stop. Just do less. Just feel into the season. What is this season telling you? Right now we're in fall. It's shedding. It's shedding what no longer serves. We're getting ready to go into deep hibernation and rest. So lots to think about. I know that one thing I can help you with is think, what is one wellness idea, trend, practice, or rule that never served you or no longer serves you? Just let it go. Just let it fall like the fall leaves away, and live your life without it for a while and see how you feel. You can always bring it back in, but it might surprise you that doing it never or a lot less is actually just as effective, if not more effective. So I'll leave you with that. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a good one. Hey there, one last thing I wanted to share with you. If you're enjoying this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you could rate and review it on your favorite podcast platform. It really does help us grow the show, and this being so important to me to get this message out to more women to help them optimize their wellness and ultimately their lives. This is my mission, and I would greatly appreciate it if you could support the podcast by rating and reviewing. Thanks in advance. Have a good one.